Okay, in this lesson, we're going to be looking at setting up your character to move. So from the last lesson, you should have a blueprint class that looks like this. One thing I have updated is you may want to make the character smaller because it is quite big on this one that I'm using. So here in the scale, I've just locked it so it moves them all together, and then I've lowered it down from 1 to, so I put it back to 1, quite big. So I put it down to 0.4. And then I have made the capsule smaller again to fit the character. So that may be something you want to pause and the video and do now. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking at the event graph. So I'll just delete this. So what you'll start off with is this when you go into the event graph. Now the event graph will hold all the what are known as nodes. So these are nodes. Basically, nodes connect up. So if you was to hold down, it pulls out a wire, and you can add another node. So at the moment, we have these set up, but we don't need to worry about them at the moment. We're going to just actually drag away. So right click to drag, and we're going to create a new node, start from scratch. So to begin with, we're going to right click and search for the move right. So you remember from the last video at the start we looked at the inputs. This is the axis input. So on this axis events, so this is basically saying, and this behind it has the code to say that we are using the move right. So then what we're going to do, we're going to drag, and we are going to add a compare float. So what a compare float does is we have multiple values. So if it's greater than, equal to, or less than, it will then decide what to do off those. So if it's greater than 0, less than 0, so +1, -1, equal to 0, it will decide what to do. So then what we're going to do is we're going to search for a one second. It is what we need to make first, sorry, is a variable. So a variable is basically a question. So I'm going to call this walk 01. So this is either a yes or no question. That's what a variable is. So if I drag this in, and you want this to be a set, not a get, because you're setting the value. So we've got set1, and I'm going to do it again. Set at the bottom. So set this as ticked. So this is positive, so greater than. And if it's not ticked, it's less than. So we're going to go down. So this one's reading that they're comparing if it's positive or less than to tell the move right which way to go. Whether to go left or right. So the next thing we need to do is get the idle. So, you know, if nothing's been pressed, it'll do the idle animation, it won't move, so equal to 0. So what we're going to search for is a movement input. So the movement input. So we're looking for this one, add movement input down here in the inputs part, ignore all the rest. So here we have this. So what we have here is set. It's going to go in both these. So we need to change the world direction in the X to 1. So basically this saying is if the walk is set higher than 1, which is pushing the button right, so the right button or D on the keypad, whatever you've set up to move right is, then it will move +1 in the X. So it'll move 1, the equivalent of a 1 unit to the right, and if it's negative, it'll do -1. So move 1 unit to the left. So if it's equal to, we're actually going to set this from here, the axis value, straight to the scale value, and that is the walk setup. So this is the walk, if you will. So next we're going to search for jump. So the jump is already set up for you. So you've got the jump here. In a sense, it's set up so it will work, but not so it will play your animation. We're just going to set it up at the moment. So again, jump. Say this one. So sorry, yes, we got this the wrong way. So we want the input jump first. So if the jump button's being pressed, it will play the jump. If it's released, it will stop. So going up to here, and then stop jumping when it's released. So that's quite a simple one. When the jump is pressed, it will jump. When it's released, it will stop jumping. And that is that setup. Save and compile that. So that's for this character that you've been working on. So you're just in the event graph here. So we can close this. So one thing I did have to do also was rotate this player start. So if you just go to your Windows, I'll show the details one. So in your details here, I just had to rotate this in the Z to be the other way around. So it's actually supposed to be at 90. Oop. Sorry, that's the position. What have I done there? There we go. Sorry. The rotation, sorry, I think it was at minus 180, or at 180, I think it was. So it's pointing that way. You just want to set that to 0 in the Z. So it's the arrow you can see is pointing towards the right. This means your character's going to be set up in the right direction. So the next thing we need to do is we need to set up a camera. So we go back into the goblin character, just forgotten this, and we go into here. Just to check if I've got one set up. I do have one set up, so I'll just delete that. So your character's set up like this. So what you need to do is you need to add in a component. So there is some components here, but we're just going to search for what's known as a spring arm. Spring arm is sort of how far away the camera is going to be, and keeps its distance from the character. So we can increase the length here, so I'm able to change that to, let's say, I don't know, 400. We want to rotate this as well, so we want this in the Z to be rotated to minus 90, I believe. So it's facing the camera, so it's facing the character, sorry. And then we're going to add component, and this time we're going to search for camera. Now we just want to make sure that that's a child, so it's underneath the spring arm, not like that. We want it underneath the spring arm like that. Now the camera at the moment is out here, so we need to potentially move this camera in. So it's at the end of the spring arm, so spring arm's at 400. There we go. And then we just need to rotate this to 0. So it's set on where the character's set, like so. We need to then change this to orthographic from perspective because we don't want the camera moving all over the place. We want it stuck in one view. And then the orthographic width is the size of your camera. So at the moment it's at 512. I'm just going to up that to 2048. Remember that scale of 2. So 512, 1024, 2048. We're just going to save that and compile that. And we can close. So next what we want to do is create a game mode. Now the game mode is going to replace the game mode that's in there as a preset. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to create go back to the Goblin file, create a new folder, call this game mode. Yeah, remember you can't use spaces, so you might want to use an underscore instead. In here, I'm going to right click, blueprint class, and this time we're going to use the game mode base. It's already here in the setup where it should be. If you have it minimized, just open that up. It should be there. You can always search it. We're going for game mode base. So I'm going to change the name of that to, just rename that to Goblin Test Game. As you can see here, it's called Goblin Test Game. So if we open this, one thing we do need to change is over here on the right, so you can ignore most of it for now. The important thing we need to change is the default pawn class over here. And we need to change this to your character, or the character we're using in this. We left click this, and in here you should be able to search for your character. So here we've got Goblin character. Then all I need to do is press save, compile, close that. And then the last bit, you need to have your world settings. This isn't on, or isn't there. Go up to window and just tick on world settings here. And then inside game mode, in your world settings over here, there's a game mode override. So it would normally be something like 2D side scroll or whatever it is to set off with. You want to click that and just change that to the game mode you've just created. So Goblin Test Game, mine is. And then that should be set up and ready to go. So now you press save current, and then we got to play. The character is there. I click. The jump is working. We must be having some issues with the left and right. Let me just try check that. So we go back to Goblin. Flipbooks, your character. So we've got input action jump. That's all right. That's right. Okay. Sorry, I just forgot to put the access input value into input, I believe. So save, compile. I think that should work now. Move left and right and jump. So now the character's gonna. Now obviously the animations aren't there, but your character is moving and working. The idle animation is playing. The camera is also up. The camera follows the character. Obviously this will be inside your game with your character and your world, game level if you will. So that is it for this session. We will look at adding your walk animation, jump animation to this setup in the future. So that is all.